This is Binghamton Now on News Radio 1290 WNBF Binghamton and WNBF.com.
I'm Bob Joseph. This is Thursday, October 31st, 2024. We're on the air till noon, but don't waste any time. If you have something to say, go ahead. Give us a call. Right now, 607-772-1290. WNBF. And we're on the air live and local. We do it live. Why not? That's the best radio when it's live and when it's local. So if you want to join us in our Festival of Conversation, I would encourage you to join us. Yes, go ahead. Even if you've never called a program before, there's nothing to fear. It's just two people talking and a few other people listening in so we know what's going on around Binghamton and beyond. We cover the world, and we are pleased to do it. WNBF.com is your source for news. So if you want more local news, local reporting, and some interesting features, WNBF.com is definitely the place to go. I encourage you to check it out on a regular basis. And we'll have some very interesting stories on our website coming up today. So don't forget to check it out. Yeah, you can check it out once in the morning and once in the afternoon, or if you really want to stay up on things, you might want to check it out more frequently. Because you never know. We're always adding some things, some local reporting at WNBF.com. The election, 5 days away. Early voting is continuing in Broome County and all of New York State. So if you feel some sort of inclination to vote ahead of time, you certainly should do it. Do it. We encourage you. We encourage you to do it. Voting, we know thousands of people already have voted here in Broome County with early voting. I received a note from someone who is identified as WNBF listener. So the listener doesn't want to be publicly identified, but it's an interesting note. And the listener makes a really good point. So, and it's a point where it's actually caused me to rethink sort of an ongoing message that I've been communicating over the last few days. So listen to the note. Mr. Joseph. Morning, Bob. Short note regarding the running joke about casting your vote at the last minute on Election Day. Not really funny. Some in your audience might not realize it is a joke. It was basically a joke. Now, whether or not I actually followed through with my purported plan to wait until 8:59 next Tuesday night to show up at my polling place, whether I actually did it or not, is really irrelevant. The point that WNBF listener is making is this. The good people who staff the polls on Election Day will certainly not be laughing. They are working from 5 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. 17 hours, a long day indeed. One can imagine how they feel about folks deliberately waiting until 5 minutes before closing time to arrive to vote. Here's an idea. Make a joke about voting early. Bring the notion of early voting to people's attention. October 26th through November 3rd at 5 sites in Broome County. By the way, I have been, I think every day, mentioning the early voting option. In fact, we've had election commissioners on from Tioga and Broome counties talking about early voting, so it's not as though I've neglected that. WNBF listener concludes by saying this might have the effect of spreading votes or voters out over time, so all are not bunched up at the poll on Election Day. Long waiting lines can lead to short tempers. Thanks, WNBF listener. And thank you, WNBF listener, for a good note and a valid point. So I hereby revise my plan. I still intend to vote next Tuesday on Election Day because I'm a traditionalist. And we'll see. Now, as far as what you do, I agree with WNBF listener, the anonymous listener. So if you are able, vote early. And we know that in some cases at some of the early voting sites, there have been some lines and some waits, but apparently nothing too difficult for people to handle. So, that's I guess anybody, you are well within your right to wait till late Tuesday evening to show up at the polls, but as the note suggests, that's probably not in the best interest of anybody overall, even if it seemed amusing potentially to someone over the last few days. It's not really something to strive for. It's 9:17 at WNBF. Wow, what a weather forecast. Mostly sunny today, high 76, cloudy tonight, showers likely, low 58. Mostly cloudy tomorrow with showers in the morning, then gradually becoming sunny. The temperature will rise to 65 by about midday and then plunge to 55 during the afternoon. So we'll have apparently a high late tomorrow morning in the mid-60s, and then the temperatures will start to drop. Then things get back to normal or closer to normal on the weekend with more typical autumn temperatures. Still not too bad. Mostly sunny Saturday, 52. Mostly sunny Sunday, 56. Right now in downtown Binghamton, it's 49. 9 Celsius. WNBF air quality, they say, is moderate. Moderate, 54. It's the air quality index here in downtown Binghamton. 9:18. This is the Thursday edition of Binghamton Now on News Radio WNBF 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, streaming at WNBF.com. It's already Thursday. Yes. The week is flying right by. In the news at WNBF.com, construction is underway on the 700-bed Vestal off-campus housing project. We have talked about it and covered the story for years. The 43-acre site has just been covered with trees and wildlife. It's a great place for deer to wander. In fact, there was a big buck on the site yesterday. So I stopped by to observe some of the initial work near the Binghamton University campus. The site is between Bun Hill Road and Jensen Road. A substantial amount of property. Landmark Properties of Athens, Georgia, has been planning the project for 6 years. So it's taken a long time before the work could even start. But now the work is starting. There had been some land clearing earlier this year, but not all. It's sort of an early start, but then there was no activity for the last few months over at that site, which is, I think it's about a mile south of the Binghamton University Vestal campus. Landmark Properties says this 700-bed project will cover more than 314,000 square feet and include 161 units. So I don't know the complete history of housing projects in Broome County, but this would seem to be one of the biggest projects in recent memory. As our story at WNBF.com indicates, there were legal challenges by some people, some Vestal residents, and some people, I think, who were outside the town. But some people, as you know, went to court and spent quite a bit of money to try to prevent this project from going forward. One of the biggest concerns was they wanted to maintain the rural character of that part of Vestal. There are other concerns, too, environmental concerns, traffic concerns, and so on. The legal battle, though, finally ended last spring. It was in March. A state appeals court ruled against the effort to block the project. So now it's moving forward. The president of Landmark Properties, Wes Rogers, in a news release acknowledged the company had experienced the significant barriers to enter the local market of this project. He praised the persistence of his team for making this happen. So this is a very big project. Landmark Properties has some similar projects around the country, too. They already have a couple of others in New York State. One, I believe, in the Syracuse area that is already under construction. It's 9:26 at WNBF. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
It's John. I from Binghamton, but I do go to Vestal, go to the meetings there.
Yeah. Do they enjoy your presence in Vestal? Do they welcome you with open arms when you attend the town board meetings?
Well, before I answer that, and I will answer it, just let me ask you one question. Do you consider it newsworthy, or let's put it this way, when's the last time a town official had a bankruptcy of $1.5 million while in office, to your knowledge?
Oh, I don't know about the personal finances. I don't even know about the personal finances of the presidential candidates. So, well, I mean, a lot of people encounter struggles in their business lives, and sometimes you have to resort to the bankruptcy law. I mean, whether you've got challenges, personal financial challenges or business challenges, the bankruptcy law is there for you.
How about hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of mortgages taken out like 3 weeks before the bankruptcy?
Well, I don't know how it all works. I mean, I know a little bit how it works, but, remember Bruce Williams when he had his financial advice show for many years on WNBF? It's too bad he's no longer with us, because this would be more in his wheelhouse. He would be able to respond more to what you brought up. So, bottom line, in Vestal, when you show up at the town board meetings, most people are happy to see you.
No. There's the contingent that goes to the board meetings is the hardcore 250, 280 Schaeferites, we'll call them.
Was that a beer? Oh, no, they don't make that.
No.
Or have they shut that Schaefer plant down? Didn't they have a Schaefer plant somewhere in, was it Brooklyn? I have no idea where they made it. Anyway, continue. So did you, I know I sort of steered the conversation over to one side, and I know before you called in, we were talking about this big Vestal project, which was a big campaign issue. This retreat at Bun Hill had been a big campaign issue at one point for the town supervisor and even the town board races.
Yeah.
But now it's going to happen.
Well, when tumult is created in a municipality or a school district, there are people that come out of the woodwork and run that they're going to do something about that issue, but they get the benefit of the tumult. But when it comes to doing what everybody thought they were voting for, it doesn't happen. I saw it in the Binghamton School District. I've seen it in other places, and the gentleman that was leading that, the president of what Schaefer would call the Bun Hill Road Gang, nice guy. You've spoken to him. You had him on many times.
Yes, he'd seen, sometimes he came to or I think a couple times he came to the studio. Yeah,
straight-laced guy, ducks in a row type. But, see, that's not how these local governments work. People think if they've got a pile of papers and, they're talking and they're in conversations and they're getting all the documents that they need, that, number one, these people are going to use reason and rationale, and that's giving them credit for reason and rationale that they don't particularly have. It goes like it goes, and I very seldom does it go the way these citizen groups or pressure groups think they're going to go. That you've got a petition with so many signatures, and it just doesn't work that way. There are people, just like in Washington, but there are people that have access to special favors, and these towns, for the most part of them, are all poorly run and have got a lot of things in the closet that they don't want fished out. And you're better off, in my opinion, going heavy, going like a Trump in a china shop, if you will.
Well, I don't know. Can you imagine a candidate in a china shop, or a candidate driving a tank, or a candidate driving a garbage truck, anything like that? I mean, sometimes they wind up coming up with photo ops that make you wonder.
Well, that's for sure, but it's a gimmick a day. And
I wonder what gimmicks we're going to see over the next 4 or 5 days. Do you think any other gimmicks that will amaze and astonish us?
Well, what I find incredible about Trump is he responds in real time to whatever's going on. For example...
Yeah, but it might not be the best response, because I'll just say this, and I didn't know the complete background of yesterday's photo op, but when I saw the first photo, before I read more about what he said and why he did it, I thought it was reinforcing that comedian's so-called comedy show at Madison Square Garden on Sunday, and I thought maybe that's not what you want to do in the closing days of this important campaign.
Well, I'll tell you what you're not going to see. You're not going to see what you saw in the George Bush Sr. campaign, which was the last week. Bush Sr. completely collapsed. He had a train ride for 2 or 3 days in Minnesota. He was totally fatigued, totally out of energy. You're not going to see that. This guy's going to go right to the wire.
All right. Well, I hope. See, one thing that I was thinking last night, after looking at the video and listening to the comments of, well, actually not just of the Republican candidate, but also the Democratic candidate, one thing I thought is, for both these people, I'm concerned about their health and safety in the closing days of this campaign. And I know this is so important. Neither one is inclined to slow down or stand down. And there's going to be essentially a frenzy of campaign stops and travel over the next few days. Personally, I'm worried. I can't say specifically about what. I just think, given the current climate and then the frenzy of this campaign, whether it's health or physical safety of both of the candidates and even the vice presidential candidates, I really wish for their personal safety and also for the cohesiveness of this country that the rest of the campaign would be conducted virtually. Just find a secure bunker and release your messages, your video messages, or do phone interviews or whatever. But be careful out there. Anyway, I appreciate your call. Thank you. Thank you so much. 9:34 WNBF coming up. We're going to focus on election closer to home, the special election for Binghamton City Council in the 6th District. We'll talk with Republican Phil Strawn. Coming up next, I'm Bob Joseph on News Radio WNBF and WNBF.com.
Automotive Tech.
This is Binghamton Now. I'm Bob Joseph on a Thursday morning. Pleased to welcome to the studio Phil Strawn, Republican candidate for Binghamton City Council. I won't call it just a special election. I'll call it a very special election.
Very special, Bob.
Yeah.
Rematch of sorts, right?
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for joining us. This is an unusual situation. I think I would be safe to say it's unprecedented in the city of Binghamton because of last year's election for the 6th District, which covers part of the South Side. For people who don't recall, you and Democrat Rebecca Rathmel wound up in a tie. It took a long time for it to be certified, and then there were court challenges. By the way, what was that like as a candidate? I know it's one thing for me to cover that kind of unusual story with a tie vote in a local election. It's one thing as a reporter, but I really can't imagine what that had to be like for you as a candidate or for your family or friends, just not knowing how things were going to wind up.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of, hopefully it'll end on Tuesday, but as Rebecca, my opponent, said, we did a little forum at the Southside Neighborhood Assembly a couple weeks back, and we've been at this theoretically for 500 plus days, however you want to look at it. Maybe not every day is exactly the same, but yeah, it was a little nerve wracking. I think it was, it was funny to be obviously to be integral in the process more than a bystander, but yet a bystander in the sense of how does this work, what happens next, in learning some of those things as a curiosity standpoint, but then being the, how it's going to affect you and your plans, your life, the things that you do, was a little nerve wracking. I was very pleased though with I think the professionalism of the county, the Board of Elections at both levels. I think they did a good job. I think they followed the process like they were supposed to. I never felt any sense of, chicanery or anything like that. I just thought they did a good job, and I think it was respectful and that type of thing. And then kind of led to some other stuff early in the year, but I'll be glad that it's over one way or the other, to be honest, and because it's been quite a process and it's kind of hangs over your head a little bit the whole time.
Well, and ultimately, a Supreme Court judge ruled that City Council did have the right to appoint a new council member for the 6th District because of the deadlock, because of the tie vote results. But for whatever reason, Democrats chose not to appoint you to a seat you had previously held to represent constituents in that part of the South Side who you have already represented. What was that like when your council colleagues wound up choosing someone different, somebody who had indicated he would not run for this year's special election? What did that mean for you personally?
Yeah, that was the period of time that was probably the most stressful. The whole, from January 1st and the appointment that week by the mayor to, that special meeting when they, did not follow, in my opinion, not a lawyer, I'm an accountant by trade, but to not follow what I believe, at least the spirit of the judge's order in that sense. I think I think that they said that neither one of us, one of the reasons they said was neither one of us should be in there, and I felt like one of us should be in there. I think we had a vested interest. I think we had both, maybe not officially, but, more or less committed that we were gonna run again. And so that meeting was very stressful because I felt, they kept saying it's not personal, and I felt, well, how could it not be in some ways? I served for 4 years. We don't agree on everything, but I think I did a good common sense job for the city and for my district, and I believe that's what the judge had ordered. And to be fair, they kicked us pretty good in the election last year. It had already had 6 seats, so to have an alternative voice is not necessarily a bad thing. And I'm not a abrasive type person. I work well with people, so I'm approachable. So I was not going to just go in there and try to just muck things up and really, be a jerk in any way, shape, or form. So I thought, just even personality-wise, that I was the perfect candidate to stay in and hold that place till we have the election on Tuesday. But that's what happened. My understanding is that Mr. Costi has, at least voiced his opinion and, kind of stood up and not just sat there and did nothing. So I'm glad about that. And, we'll move on Tuesday, and hopefully we'll have a decisive one way or the other.
Tell me a little bit about your approach to the campaign, because while Rebecca Rathmel has been on this program multiple times, I don't know if it's been 2 or 3 times since she officially announced her candidacy, even though it was presumed that this year's special election would be a rematch. This is the first time we're hearing from you. You are taking what I would consider at minimally at least a low-key approach. I mean, you did participate in the recent forum for Southside residents, but we haven't seen and heard a lot of you as this November 5th election approached.
Yep. Well, that's a good question. I think I did take a little bit of a low-key approach. I've been out talking to people and doing my thing. I had, a few, not about me, but a few health challenges in the spring. I have actually had a few over the last few years. I feel really good right now. So, some of that was, I think, personal. My wife has had some serious health challenges over the last couple years with seizures and things like that. So I think some of it was kind of life and personal, just kind of taken over. I'm one of the vice presidents at the children's home, and it's a demanding job, and we've been really growing over there, expanding our program. So I think just a variety of life and a little bit of fatigue, a little bit of health issues. But I've been out there, kind of doing my thing and just kind of kept a little bit of a lower profile, I think. But, and this is going to be a turnout election too with the larger, races and candidates. So just trying to kind of keep and talk to people and just kind of, keep ahead of it and, let them make it. I saw a lot of people over the course of time, and, I think the voters will make a wise decision.
For our listeners, perhaps who live elsewhere in Binghamton or maybe not even in Binghamton, describe the general area that is covered by the 6th District. What part of the South Side?
Yeah, the new 6th District is a little bit odd, but it's essentially the South Side on the north of the South Side along the river, and it essentially stretches from the town of Vestal to the town of Conklin. So on the east side, the whole area north of Conklin Ave, the Tompkins Street corridor, all through there is part of the 6th District. The middle section, Mill Street, north of Vestal Ave, over towards Tompkins Street on the north side of Conklin Ave, and then it kind of comes down around Ben Franklin School, and then the west side, essentially up to Moore Ave, all the way to Vestal, or I'm sorry, north of Moore Ave down to Vestal Ave. So that corridor, west of Pennsylvania Ave from Moore over that whole area, MacArthur and all that is part of the 6th District.
What do you perceive to be the biggest issues in this campaign as you've talked with residents around the 6th District?
I think, I said in the forum, I think, public safety is always going to be, top of the list, I believe. I think, people just want to be safe and that. And, I want to say, I think our approaches are a little different. I mean, clearly, one agreement, at least in a broad sense, with my opponent and I, is the housing code. All of those related issues are, integral, especially on the east side of the South Side. Some of those old neighborhoods are, really showing their age, and kind of sad to see. So I think that is a big thing. Of course, the normal public works, parks, things like that. I think the city's doing a great job with those things. But clearly, I know that the pool, they're looking at different ideas for the pool over at Webster Park, and so there's things that are kind of right down to the minutia of people's day-to-day lives in their neighborhoods that they live in. But I think the code issues, the public safety issues, are probably front and center. In my mind, and I've always been a big proponent of taking care of the city's assets, or the things that are near and dear, so to speak. I think we did a great job with Ely Park, and we can see some of the things that have come out of that. And I think they're looking at some. I know they've done some things at the Discovery Center, but look, some major upgrades at Ross Park. I realize that's technically in the 5th District, but South Side for sure. The ownership might not be exactly the same, but things like that the city can invest and really take care of the assets, the stadium, Ely Park, the parks, Rec Park, MacArthur Park, all of the assets the city has. I think we've done a good job of taking care of those. So I think those are kind of the things. The beautiful field that they finished. Every time I walk down the new path on 434 and just look over at that beautiful field at MacArthur, I just think, wow, that's something to be proud of. It's something that's state of the art, and something that people are proud to take people to and have their kids play and watch games and things like that. So I'm excited about that.
Speaking with Phil Strawn, the Republican candidate in a special election for the 6th District, representative on Binghamton City Council. It's 9:49 on this Thursday morning. WSKG reported that Benji Fetterman, the county Republican committee chairman, in a statement called Rebecca Rathmell's positions extreme and not in line with Binghamton Southside residents. Do you agree with that assessment?
I think as it relates to some of her former positions and statements on especially public safety, I would agree with that. I don't think she's totally fleshed out what she means by reimagining public safety, reimagining community. I'm not 100% sure what that means. There was a post, and I'm not one of those people. And when we left the forum, we got several people shook our hands and said, we kind of wish that, bigger races were a little, as cordial and as substantive as what we had. So it's certainly not something that, take the gloves off or anything like that. But, Facebook posts that literally said, defund the police, and things like that is something that I, didn't make up. She did say that or take that position. And some of the meetings that she's attended over the years, I think, shall I say, I don't disrespectful to be kind. I think there's a discourse that you have to have and a respect of the office and the people that are serving. That doesn't mean that you agree with them by any stretch of the imagination, but I think some of the mannerisms and attitude and things like that were displayed at some meetings over the course of time were very disrespectful to the process and the office that she's looking to hold. That being said, I think some of the housing issues, she's passionate about it for sure, and she has a lot of things to offer in that area. There's no question that she's a an expert in that field, homelessness and things like that. And I do respect her for that. To be honest, I think. So the biggest single thing is public safety, and I think that's where probably Mr. Fetterman's comments came out of, and from my personal perspective of seeing some of those crazy meetings that we had and wondering where that level of anger, came from, especially as it directed toward the police.
And it should be noted that you and Rebecca Rathmell have known each other for a long, long time. I would go so far as to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think you consider each other friends.
I would say that at a level, sure. She was a student when I worked at Davis College. She knows my daughter Hannah and my wife Nikki very well. She was, kind of an energetic student at that point when I worked there. And 1 year, so it's been about 20 years and off and on. About 20 years ago when we moved from Pennsylvania en route to Conklin Ave, in 2006. In 2005, we lived at the house right the east side of the campus on Riverside Drive for a year. So that year, daughter was 4 years old, spent basically every day on campus running around and really getting to engage in the students at a more of a personal level, and got to know her pretty well at that time. Known her, I believe ex-husband now, his family very well, the Rathmel family, big basketball players and big sports people, and her ex-father-in-law, Dan, was a good friend of mine and kind of a mentor. He's obviously older than me. But so, yeah, there's been that interaction. And I know early in the process after she graduated, she was, worked with Mayor David and a lot of other things and was on a path to really, kind of work with people in a substantive way. And I think somewhere along the line kind of got a little bit, I don't know, just a little bit more from an advocate to more of a, kind of agitator occasionally. But she's well-spoken, she's educated, she's intelligent, she's sharp, and, and I'm sure when she's talking to people and things like that comes across. And, so I respect her for that. She is passionate about what she does, and I give her credit for that.
How important do you think it is for City Council in 2025 to have at least one Republican member? Because if Rebecca Rathmel wins the special election, all 7 seats will be held by Democrats, and they'll be working with Republican Mayor Jared Cram in the coming year. So does it make, in your personal opinion, would it make much of a difference to have at least officially one Republican voice on a 7-member council?
I believe so. The question is from the day to the things that we do day to day with, your garbage code, my neighbors did this, the street lights out, all those things. That's important. Is that enough of an issue? I mean, I think it might be. I think some people, have seen, I don't want to say there's some remorse or buyer's remorse of what possibly happened. I'm not sure how people look at these local elections. Like I said before, I was, happy to hear that Mr. Costi has, kind of stood up and not been a jerk, been very professional and respectful, but did not just sit there. He did voice his opinion and concern. So I think that is a healthy dialogue. I think legislatively it doesn't, you might not be able to do a lot of parliamentary things or whatever, but I think, in the end, I think we all want what's best for the city. So I do think that is important. Got a little counsel here and there from Chris Papistrat, who was, I think, the last time in the mid-2000s was I think he was the lone Republican as well as not even having the mayor's office. So, but I think going into to Jared's, the mayor's race next year, that, it would kind of say something if we could kind of hold on to the seat and be able to voice, at least our side of the issues when there's differences and coming up with substantive solutions when there's agreement. And I think, there's a lot more agreement. Like I said, I'm easy to work with. I'm not, going to sit there and be just agitative for agitative's sake. I think I, work well with people and, committee assignments and things like that for the betterment of the city. So, yeah, I think that is important. Now, whether to an individual voter it would rise to the level as, making their decision, I'm not sure. But I would make a play that it's important to have that alternate view on the city council.
Republican Phil Strawn, again facing Democrat Rebecca Rathmel, this time in a special election for the 6th District on Binghamton City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate it. Go out and vote. That was the biggest disappointment last time, that the turnout. I know the turnout will be higher, but please go vote either way. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Welcome back to the program. Mike Ziegler, who is running for the New York State Senate in the 52nd District. He's challenging the Democratic incumbent, Leah Webb. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me back, Bob.
Yeah, so tell me about the campaign. You were with us not that long ago. How are things going as you travel throughout the 52nd District and try to get acquainted with the voters and let them know what your views are on some of the critical issues?
No, it's just interesting. You're in the last week now, and it's less than a week left. And it's just interesting because you've done something for so long at this point. Like 18 months we've been campaigning. We've hit every town in the 52nd District from the largest to the smallest town. I tell the story about, going to Freetown and walking into their town hall, and their town hall isn't really a town hall. It's their highway department garage, and there's a card table set up, and that's where they have their town hall meetings. And it's just, you get to meet and get the flavor for each of the town and meet a lot of the town leaders and kind of figure out what they're about. And it's a very diverse district. And to kind of get the unifying theme behind it all has been, it's been a great 18-month adventure doing that. Costs clearly still, excuse me, costs clearly still the number one issue for everyone. They're worried about getting by. I mean, everybody's now buying their heating oil and they're looking at their natural gas and propane prices and they're concerned going into winter. And then you have crime. You know, it's not so much that the crime rate, it's a matter of they walk out on the street and they don't see any police. Maybe they're leaving the restaurant at midnight with money in their pocket after serving a shift and they don't see any police, and that concerns them. I hear that a lot in Ithaca in the comments. So there are a lot of unifying themes across the district.
Has there been anything new that has recently emerged? What you mentioned basically were some of the same things we talked about when you were last with us in the studio. Has anything come up, say, in the last few weeks that has surprised you, or at least attitudes, anything that you've noticed as a change in specific concerns in the entire district or in some parts of the district?
Right. Energy's come up a lot more than it had. I mean, it's always figured into cost, but people have, the last couple of things I've done, people have talked a lot more about energy and where they think the energy future for New York is. They do worry about the large-scale solar because, you know, I've talked about this before. All that we've seen in upstate New York so far is community solar, which is fine. You can buy into it. Usually farmers use that to just to add to their farm, to add to the income. But industrial-scale solar eats up thousands of acres, and you're going to see a lot of that in upstate New York, and it's all really for energy downstate. You're going to have to run new wires, and it's a very costly venture. And that's going to be borne by all the ratepayers, and that does worry people. They understand that that's costly and how it's going to affect their bills. So I've seen that pop up a lot more.
It's been a suggestion in some advertising in this race that the incumbent Democrat, Leah Webb, who lives in Binghamton, that she is somehow beholden to New York City, the New York City power brokers, Democrats who, and I get it because I've hosted this program now for over 13 years. A lot of people do perceive that our interests sometimes are taking a second or third seat or a back seat somewhere to the interest downstate. And is it really your view that Leah Webb is not properly representing the interest of the people in the 52nd district?
Well, I mean, take advertising. If people were to say to you, for example, I've seen a lot of the congressional argument, right? The congressional argument is, well, you've taken money from this person, so you're beholden to them. Well, my opponent, most of her money, most of her financing has come from Albany. It's come from the Democratic committee. If you look at all the mailers that have been put out, these are expensive mailers. They're full size, maybe 2-page mailers. That's not an inexpensive venture. I mean, we ventured that $1 million has been spent by Albany to get my opponent elected. So when you're looking at those kind of numbers, it's hard to argue that person isn't then indebted to the people that are propping up that campaign. All our money has come from local people. We use the public finance effectively. We were able to raise a lot of small dollar donations, and we focused on that because the money then has to come from in district if you expect a match from the state, and that was really the purpose of the whole public match. So I feel that we've been effective in doing that. When it comes to, somebody told me something once that I thought was really interesting. I was wondering why they kept pushing this one issue that was downstate. It was down in New York City, and they were trying to pass a law in New York City. I'm like, why do you care so much about this? This is New York City. And they said, remember this. Everything that happens in New York City then goes to Albany because you have a lot of people representing, the state in New York City. They then take it to Albany, and then it goes statewide. And that has been true across the board, whether it be bail reform, whether it be the HALT Act, whether it be energy policy right now. It's all centered around New York City and what's best for New York City. And I don't see really any pushback from my opponent against that.
You mentioned this issue of money and the mention of perhaps $1 million being spent by one side to have the incumbent elected to another 2-year term. That's I was not aware of that number. So based on where things stand now, how much more money is likely to be spent on her behalf compared to your campaign as you work to challenge her and work to unseat her?
All the money has pretty much been locked down at this point. I mean, you can only buy TV, you can only buy radio to a certain point. So the money that's been spent has been spent. Like, you couldn't go out right now, for example, and probably get a mailer into people's mailboxes before Election Day. You can buy some radio, you can buy some television, things like that, maybe buy some social media. But so the money that's out there is out there. And we were, like I said, we met our budgeting goals. We were happy with that. We feel that we've spent the amount we needed to get our message out. A lot of it, though, for us, for any challenger, it comes down to a couple things. Door to door is very important because it's inexpensive and it's effective. You go to somebody's door and they meet you and they like what you're saying, they're probably going to go vote for you. But the other thing is just we've gone to a lot of events. We've been to every town. We've been to an event pretty much in every town. We've met people where they live, and that's critical. You have to go and meet people where they are. You can't expect people to come vote for you if you're not willing to go into their town and meet with them.
So tell me, as you look back on the campaign, and you mentioned it's been a long time since you made your initial announcement, what's the biggest surprise been?
The biggest surprise, I don't know if it was the biggest surprise. It was more of the... It was a surprise because it was so nice. It's when you start walking into rooms where you've never been before the campaign, and you know maybe a dozen people in that room, and you're like, okay, I'm doing my job here. Or if somebody comes up to you and says, oh, like you go up to somebody at an event and you're introducing yourself and you're in a different town, and they go, oh, I met you at such and such, and it's like a couple towns away. That's always a surprise because you think of the district, it's pretty big. I mean, you're trying to reach over 300,000 people. And when you're starting to run into people again and again, that's a nice surprise because then you start thinking the district's not quite as big as you think it is. It takes about an hour, 10 minutes to drive across it. But it really is. The 52nd district does have a lot of unity to it. And I think that's the strength of it, and I think that's what we need to capitalize on if I go to Albany.
Do you think the presidential race is going to have a great impact on local and state races? I mean, obviously, so much of the oxygen, the media oxygen, and to a large extent the advertising has been focused on the presidential race and what's going on between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Is that likely to help or hurt you? Because obviously we know that a lot more people are probably going to vote this time than 4 years ago, just based on the early voting trends here in the district. It looks like a lot of people took advantage of early voting in the first few days, and I'm sure that'll continue. Is the presidential race likely to ultimately, in your opinion, impact, say, your race in the 52nd Senate District?
I wish I had a good answer for you on this. If I did, I'd probably be on one of the news channels.
See, you'd be a CNN or a Fox News commentator if you knew the answer, or at least if you claim to know the answer. I mean, let's face it. I mean, and nobody knows. I'm curious about just your impression.
It's just so interesting to watch the difference between the southern tier and the northern tier. I mean, if you go to the northern tier and you watch television advertising, you're like, wow, there's a lot of presidential advertising. But you come to the southern tier and you don't see any presidential because New York State simply isn't really in play.
Right.
But if you want that presidential election, you're turning out to do it. You're turning out to vote. And I think everybody should turn out to vote, always. I mean, it's the down ticket races. This is always my concern about down ticket races, is they kind of get forgotten in a larger race. And it's these local issues that are really going to impact you. They wanted to move the state. This was just ruled unconstitutional. The state had wanted to move all local races into a presidential year. And I just think that's a huge mistake because this is what you would see. Everybody would be focused on the presidential year. And it's your town supervisors, it's your city councilors who if your road's not plowed and you can't get to work, those are the people you're calling, not the President of the United States. These are the local granular issues that really matter to people. And same thing with the state. If you think the state is on the right track, if you think it's being well managed, then I'm probably not the person to vote for. But if you think, like I do, that it's on the wrong track, that I'm not satisfied with the leadership in Albany, then I'm the person that I hope you're going to send to Albany.
Could this race sort of be viewed by some in the district as kind of a referendum on Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul and the way she's running things since Andrew Cuomo had to leave early?
Right. Well, it's interesting with Kathy Hochul. If the Republicans, if I win my seat, she then actually has more power, not less, because it breaks the super majority for the Senate. So then it puts her in a better negotiating power. I'm not. I think that's a good thing, actually, because what it does is then you don't have just the legislature making all the rules. You would then have to negotiate with the governor, which you don't have to do right now. So whenever the legislature says, oh, well, that wasn't our fault, that was the governor's fault, that's not actually true. You have a supermajority. You can override her at any point. What would happen here is if we win back one more seat, I think we will with Nick Parrow and Onondaga, my race will be closer than his, and I think we're going to be victorious. But that would put us in a much better bargaining position for the 52nd District and for all of upstate New York. And that's what I think is the key to my race, is that we would be able to negotiate a much stronger hand if we were to win just this one seat back.
Mike Sigler, the Republican candidate in the 52nd State Senate District, challenging the Democratic incumbent, Leah Webb. Thanks for joining us in the studio.
Thanks so much, Bob. Thanks for having me. And please, everybody go out and vote. Yeah, early voting is until Sunday, and then obviously you can vote on Election Day.
And then stay tuned for complete election coverage at all of your favorite news sources.
There you go.
Thank you. It's 1024. At News Radio, WNBF and WNBF.com. Our 607-772-1290 is the hotline. Go ahead. Make that call. Barbara in Vestal, you're on the air.
Good morning, Bob. I am feeling rather busy these days with this election coming up. And one of the things I've been noticing when I've been out and about that seems to be the ignored issue of this campaign. There's a lot of talk about the economy and how successful it is. According to the Wall Street Journal today, it's the most envious economy in the world, yet people are paying a lot of money for groceries, and they're noticing that, the kitchen table issues. The one thing that's not being talked about on a regular basis is you cannot take a left-hand turn anywhere in this country, but especially in Broome County, without hitting a construction site. It seems like the Leicester Avenue Bridge, exit 66 on 17, the railroad bridges, over and over, they are all being repaired, and that's because of the Biden-Harris bipartisan infrastructure bill.
Oh, I saw that on Route 17, Interstate 86. They even put up signs touting the bipartisan. Remember, it wasn't just a Democratic idea. It was a bipartisan bill, and I saw those signs myself.
So it was a bipartisan bill that was put forward, but it is, in fact, was passed in the House by the Democrats. 208 representatives that are Republican voted against it, and yet they're all very happy to take the money. I know Claudia Tenney, who back then was our representative, she voted it down. But when you think about the $11 billion that are being pumped into the New York State economy, and a big chunk of it coming to Broome County for the infrastructure, the roads, the airport, the railroad bridges, the regular bridges, that money creates jobs and also supports our middle-class community. And that is not being mentioned enough, I feel like, by either. I think if Josh Riley was there, he would vote yes. And that's not what happened when Tenney was there.
Yeah. Well, you make some interesting points. I forgot. Have you already voted?
I have not already voted. I have not. I'm planning. I know that 4,500 people voted on Saturday in Broome County. And then by Tuesday night, I think we were over 8,000 people had already voted in Broome County.
Yeah, it might have been even more than that, because when Daniel Reynolds, the Democratic Election Commissioner, joined us on Monday's program, he said a total of about 7,800 people had voted just on Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
So if you add Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, who knows at this point just how many Broome County voters have taken advantage of this early opportunity. I'm somewhat, well, not totally surprised, but somewhat surprised at the early voting turnout. I know, given the nature of the presidential campaign, a lot of people intend to vote this year. I'm not sure I expected this many to vote this early.
Well, I think the people are talking by their walking. I mean, the fact that people are going to the polls early shows that Americans really want to be able to access polling places easily. For the years and years, decades that we've had one-day voting really was crippling to large cities and large communities, where now that spread out over time, people can take, they can't necessarily take time off from work on that particular Tuesday. So this really gives people an opportunity to vote, and that's what's most important in the States, is our ability to vote is one of the key rights that we cherish. The other thing I wanted to mention, too, is that, I don't know what your feeling is, but I know that Prop 1 advertising that was just on your station said something about the Prop 1 may give illegals the right to vote. And I feel like that needs to be fact-checked, that many of the statements that are being made at times are not fact-checked. And news organizations that are actually entertainment organizations, and they portray themselves as news organization, do not do the journalistic responsibility they have to the public when they allow hyperbole and lies to be presented to the people as truth.
Well, the one thing you probably know about election-related advertising is media organizations under the FCC rules can't in any way change the content or really refuse advertising, even if there is some doubt about the truthiness of the message.
Right. I mean, I can understand that.
And another thing, though, about fact-checking, I think I alluded to it a few days ago. I don't believe I spoke about it for long, but maybe in passing. In terms of fact-checking right now, whether it's during debates or interviews or and I know some people now have made it an art form to do real-time fact-checking, say if candidates as they make statements during a rally or whatever. And I'm starting to wonder if all this fact-checking in the end is having any noticeable or realistic effect, because they're over the years, say over the last 8 or so years, there have been people who've pointed out, say one candidate seems to lie a whole lot of the time, and then I think the Washington Post came up with an actual number of lies, which not sure how they came up with the number, but I'm sure they explained how they came up with the number of lies, and then these are the facts, and this is what was wrong, or sometimes they say, well, it's partially true or totally false or whatever. I'm not sure that fact checking at this stage is going to have a big impact. I mean, as far as the amount of energy that it takes on the part of the media.
I get that, but this is what I guess I'll remind all of us. It was Joseph Goebbels, who was a Nazi propaganda minister, who famously said, quote, "If you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth." And that is the danger that we all face.
It's true. And that's absolutely true. If somebody said, it's sunny when it's pouring down rain or whatever, but if he said it enough, well, people would start to at least internalize that and say, well, maybe I guess actually it is sunny or whatever. No, I'm not saying I'm unconcerned about false statements or statements that are misleading or things that are exaggerated. I am concerned. Right. I have seen so much of an effort over the last at least decade, maybe the last 2 decades, on the part of major news organizations and some smaller news organizations at fact-checking. And I honestly don't think it makes a huge difference to the vast majority of voters. Yeah, it puts on the record that based on our research, this is an out-and-out lie. But let's be clear, a lot of people don't care. Or apparently don't care. Based on interviews or based on people who call this show, look, there is still a huge contingent of people, including a lot of people who are listening to this conversation, who still think that Donald Trump won the 2020 presidential election.
Actually, Bob, when I was out canvassing recently, I found out that there are people who actually believe that the January 6th assault on our Capitol was staged, and the people that have testified in court or before the Senate hearings or the House hearings, they were paid to lie. So the illusionary truth effect that is happening, which is when you hear the same false information repeated over and over again, often come to believe it as true. And there's a big emphasis in schools on critical thinking, and there is some way in which critical thinking has become absent in many of the people's world, where they are really under an illusion. And it's very, very dangerous for our democracy for people not to be able to separate fact from fiction.
I agree. But the one of the things that has intrigued me, say, over the last several weeks with the coverage of one of the presidential candidates, a lot of news organizations will say as part of the story, and the candidate again repeated a falsehood about something or other, and then they play the clip. So it basically, they can offer the disclaimer even up front that the candidate keeps lying. It's like a nonstop lying machine. And then right after that, they play the clip. And I guarantee you some people aren't paying close attention to the story, so they might not hear what the anchor or what the reporter said before playing the soundbite, but they're going to hear the soundbite, the same lie over and over again. So that, I don't understand the premise of that. And say, like, one of the things in recent weeks, earlier this month, when the focus was on the FEMA response after the hurricanes, lies kept being told about FEMA's response and also just other aspects of the federal government handling of the aftermath of the disasters, and even lies about that somehow the federal government controls the weather and was, somehow managed to target certain communities to go after people. Look, it's the theater of the absurd. And the fact, by the way, even well-intentioned news organizations, when they put out a story and say, here's another list, the top 10 lies, as if Casey Kasem were here every week offering, America's top lie countdown. And it's like, oh, well, the lies about the FEMA response last week, they were number 1, and this week they fall to number 4 on the countdown. And the countdown continues, and it's just like it's almost a game.
Well, that's why, Bob, today I brought to you a very concrete example of how successful the Biden-Harris administration has been in getting the infrastructure bill passed and having that money put to work in Broome County on 17, on Lester Avenue, on Endicott's Washington Avenue, on Old Vestal Road. Concretely, you actually see money being spent and invested in our community and in our state. And if you go to a map of the United States and the impact the infrastructure bill has had nationwide, the map is covered in green. And I think that that's something that the Democrats in the House, in the White House, and in the Senate can be very proud of, because they're showing the American people exactly what they are willing to do when they're in control. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate your call, and you better get out there and vote.
Well, as soon as I get through canvassing.
That's true.
Thanks a lot, Bob. You have a good one. Bye-bye.
It's true. It's hard to do both at the same time. 607-772-1290. You're listening to Binghamton Now on WNBF. All right, let's take more calls on our busy lines. John from the Binghamton Plaza, good morning.
Good morning. How are you today, Bob?
I am well.
That's good. Well, I had numerous calls and numerous people ask me what's happening here at the plaza. What's going on is they're raising the river. They're not demoing the plaza. The city hasn't made any proposals to us or what they're going to pay for it or the appraisals or nothing. None of that's been done. And it really upsets our tenants because they don't know what's going on. We actually got 2 new stores coming in here, and one is going to be like a thrift store, like a Salvation Army. It's called LO Junior's Oddities, and then another flea market's coming in here because they're taking their chances because they think it's going to be profitable for them. Well, what's going on here out back is they're raising all this equipment. They're raising the river walk up 2 foot, which never flooded here in 40, as long as I've been here, since the 60s. So that's what's going on. There's, everybody can't keep saying, "Oh, they're just starting to demo the plaza and stuff like that," but nothing is happening here.
When did they start working on the walking path? Because I saw that a few days ago.
It's been a few weeks now. I mean, it's just amazing. It's amazing what the way. To me, it's a waste of money because all this, every time it's flooded, it was going over the wall on Court Street. It was flooding the south side. It was flooding, Tom Dickinson. But never in all the years my shop's been here 40 years, 37 years, right? And the plaza's been here since '64, and it's never flooded here ever. I mean, it goes over the wall on the front street side, everything else, which I don't understand why they're doing it, but, well, they're doing it.
So who's actually doing the work? The city, the state?
It's Gork's doing the work. It was
right.
From the city. The city of Binghamton is actually doing the City of Binghamton project, but it's actually Gork's sub the work from us doing the work and landing electric and taking all the poles down, putting on electric and raising it up 2 feet.
Oh. So do you know if that's going to go all the way then up to Sherry Lindsay Park?
No, it's only going to the bridge. It's from what I understand. It's going from basically from Serafini's, from what I understand, to the just past the Sherry Lindsay Park.
All right. And you say since people saw some of the activity, they thought it might have something to do with the city's eminent domain proceedings that ultimately could result in the demolition of the iconic Binghamton Plaza.
Correct. I mean, everybody keeps, saying, "Oh, they're going to start tearing down everything," but they're not. The city, we haven't even come to any agreement. It's still in lawyers' hands. It's going to be a long time down the road before anything happens the way this is going. We can't even, we got new tenants coming in here, but they have other people inquiring about it, but they want longer leases. I mean, but they can't do it. These are month-to-month leases. People take their chances.
So how are things going for you as then the property manager of the site?
It's trying to get, nobody wants to spend no money. It's to spend no money on the parking lot, try to do anything else because they don't know what the city's going to do. The city's got up to 3 years to take this from us. So what do you do? I mean, we had a Chinese restaurant, takeout restaurant. They wanted to come in here, but they want a 5-year lease. We actually had I had a friggin' realtor call me twice, different realtors, about a place maybe having a Hobby Lobby here, and then we had, and that went no forward because they don't want to take that kind of chance. I don't know if it was legit, if they were really interested in the place or not. I had two different people looking to put a battery place in Kmart for, to develop more batteries. I have their names here, and the city told them that, they are taking possession of the plaza, which they didn't take possession of the plaza yet. So they walked away from it and says, "Oh, we can't do that." Every time we got to do something here, it's a big problem. Trying to get tenants there. All
right. Well, John, the property manager at the Binghamton Plaza on the north side, thanks for the update.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Keep me posted.
I will. Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.
It's 10:49 at WNBF. More calls. Paul in West Windsor, you're on the air. Tom in Endwell, you're on the air.
Good morning, Bob. Your conversation before that is not playing the rest of the soundbite or the rest of what a person had said. I think you play a critical role in that when you say, my last conversation with you, you said Trump said he was going to be a dictator on day one, and you didn't finish it out. And he said, "I'm going to secure the border and drill, baby, drill." The second thing was you said that Trump said that he's going to use the military and the National Guards to go after his own people, and you left it at that. You didn't finish it out. He said that he's going to use the National Guard and the military to stop the rioting, the looting, the smashing and burning.
Yeah, well, he didn't say that all the time. He's made different statements alluding to the same thing, that at some point he may be inclined to use the authorities to go against people who have differing views. He's never, or not always said, "Oh yeah, I'm only going to limit my illegal and unconstitutional activities if I'm president to just trying to knock down violence and illegal acts." So, yeah, for a guy who thinks he's so smart, he ought to choose his words more carefully because, there are tapes.
Well, because I haven't heard them. If you could play those sound bites.
Maybe I've played some before. Maybe I'll play more. The bottom line is the guy should stop talking to give the impression, because that's the impression he leaves for too many people, that he is willing to use the National Guard or the military against his political enemies. So maybe at tonight's wacky rally, or whatever, maybe he'll drive around in a tank with a military helmet on today's photo op to show how tough he'll be against Putin. Maybe he'll do that, and then he'll also announce, "I'm sorry if I gave anyone the impression that I would ever use the National Guard or the military against my political enemies. I absolutely will not." And also for people who were under the wrong impression that I would ever act like a dictator, even on day one, I retract that statement, and I shall never act like a dictator.
Well, he wants to secure the border.
Yeah, I know. I know what he wants. We know what he wants. He wants to ride around in a garbage truck that he can barely get into.
And the last thing I do want to speak, because it's very important to me, the hurricane that hit the Carolinas, the media and everything jumped on it is, this is all conspiracy theory. Now that people were able to get up in there and get the stories of the people and get a lot of ground footage of what's going on, to have our government call them conspiracy theorists when they're telling you what's happening and what's not happening, and thousands of people are unaccounted for. You know, I really wish that people would stop calling that conspiracy theory. And the other thing is, our media, not even the Weather Channel, is covering that area like they would Florida or other areas that's been devastated. You know, and there's also
that's true, like, say, after the flooding around here. The media, national media, covered it, or maybe referred to it for a day or so. Then after the initial reports, it was forgotten. I mean, the media behave the same no matter what the story is. If it happens in certain places, if a big story happens in Manhattan, it gets extraordinary coverage. If a similar story happens in Binghamton, it gets minimal coverage. That's just the way the media are. I mean, part of it has to do with number of viewers or audience interest. To be honest, if something happens in Binghamton, most people in the country would be like, yeah, whatever. How come it's not called Binghamton or whatever? And whereas if it happens on Manhattan's Upper West Side or somewhere in Malibu or whatever, or somewhere around the Villages or Orlando, for whatever reason, that's viewed as more compelling to the media audience. And the people who run the media know that.
Well, one thing I do want to say about those areas, there's definitely some very shady things going on.
Well, there's very shady things going on everywhere, all the time. It has nothing to do with the President of the United States. Morning, WNBF. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
This is Paul from West Windsor.
Oh, hi, Paul.
I hate to go back to the COVID thing, but during the COVID, I had some information maybe you don't know about. During the COVID thing, President Trump sent out an order Plaquenil to all the states. And now we learned that Plaquenil would have helped during the COVID. Now, these supplies that went out to the states were only to be used in the hospitals. And consequently, if you went to your doctor, you couldn't get it at a pharmacy. You had to go to the hospital to get it. So the hospital formularies, the hospital doctors wouldn't use the hydroxychloroquine because they believed some of the things said about it made it dangerous. But it turned out, I'm a retired pharmacist, it's not that dangerous. And it would have helped out during the COVID. So Trump did a good thing when he did that, and it's not well known.
All right. Well, now everybody knows.
Yeah.
Well, good for him. Good for him. What kind of vehicle will he be hopping into today? Will he finally manage to hop into a tank with his little toy helmet? I mean, you see he's hopping into a garbage truck, and all I could think of, what? That comedian who made the reference to Puerto Rico being an island of garbage.
Well, boy, joy has come to the Republican Party.
Yeah. Well, whoever came up with that stunt, that photo op, I would think ought to be fired. That was, even Sean Hannity said it was an iconic moment of the campaign. Paul, thanks for your call. More calls are coming up right here on Binghamton Now. I'm Bob Joseph on News Radio, WNBF. 11:10, let's take calls, shall we? You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, good morning there, Bob. It's Dave from Vestal. Some 3 Dog Night there, Bob. Boy, they had a lot of material. Hey, Bob, you had an earlier caller, and I'm out of Pepto-Bismol. You know, we should be very proud of the Biden-Harris administration. Yeah, infrastructure will get a real lot of votes. Forget that, number one. And what are we supposed to be so proud of? What, that we've turned our country into a global garbage dump?
Well, yeah, judging from that one candidate, he aims to clean up the mess one truck at a time.
Yeah.
What a crazy, you know, whoever came up with that photo op, give that man a blue ribbon.
Hey,
sheesh. I'd like to know. It's probably, who do you think it is? J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance came up with that idea. I betcha.
Bob, you're gonna look at the main reason. Though it's not the only reason, but the main reason, whether they like it or not, the border issue. I know we always bring it up and we always talk about it, but that's what's going to lose her the election. That one thing there, Bob, because they cannot be trusted anymore with it. And you know who else is going to put them over the top? I already told you, blacks and Hispanics. But believe it or not, women are going to put them over the top. And I know there's a big discrepancy.
I mean, of course they will.
Well, Bob, I know that they're saying he's way behind and women vote. But you know what? Many more millions of women will vote for him than men will vote for her. Remember that. And that's going to...
Okay, I'll remember it, because after the dust settles and the coverage dies down, I'm sure they'll take a look. They'll have a percentage of women, who the women voted for, and we'll see who, percentage-wise, who actually percentage-wise gets more votes from women.
Right, because I have more faith with Bob. You know, there's a lot of women out there where they don't wake up every morning where abortion is on their mind. That's the biggest thing of all. That's the only thing they're concerned about. Those women, they have deeper problems if that's what's going on. There's women that they worry about their kids, their schools, people coming across the border, people that will harm them. You can't walk down the streets. Crime. They worry about other things. Abortions, that's not high on the list. Let me tell you that. And Bob, I was a bit befuddled last night. I sat down, I was doing some thinking, I know dangerous, and I got to thinking, I keep hearing Trump's way behind in the college educated, and I got to thinking, college educated, they want 4 more years of this? Right up to COVID, the country was humming along, Bob, humming along beautifully.
No, actually, they have a report today that the economy is basically back to normal. Inflation, back to normal. The gas prices, lower than they've been in a long time. I mean, it's stunning. It's actually stunning to see how much progress has been made on many fronts in this country just over the last 18 months.
Isn't it stunning to you that college educated want 4 more years of this, Bob? Isn't that stunning? Think about it. They want 4 more years of this, and they have a college education. No, that brings me to think, Bob. You know what it is? They're being loyal to their because of the teachers, the professors. They're being loyal to their liberal Marxist teachings that they've absorbed all the years. They're staying loyal to that. They can't help themselves. Their ideology's been drilled into their heads. That's why they're voting for Harris in large numbers.
All right. Well, we'll see. I mean, in the end, my position.
I know your position, but
yeah, we need 4 more years of Trump to provide a solid amount of material, big, thick stacks of original material every morning for talk shows, not just radio talk shows, but those on TV and even for people who are doing podcasts. They really need something that's going to create a lot of excitement, a lot of suspense, and to be sure, a lot of trouble over the next 4 years. I think 4 years of Trump is going to be, or would be, I don't want to predict, 4 years of Trump would be a lot better for the news and talk show business than 4 years of Harris.
But, hey, Bob, do you know that one other thing I forgot to mention, this repeating lies over and over and over, that's the left specialty.
It's everyone's specialty. You make it sound like one side invented it. One side didn't invent lie after lie after lie. Lie after lie after lie works in campaigns to a large extent. Why would one side get to claim that they invented it and that it works best for them? Both sides will lie if they think it's going to gain them the necessary votes to win the White House. It's 11:16 at News Radio WNBF. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Ron from Binghamton.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. I think I know who engineered and set up the Trump in the garbage truck bit.
Who, Taylor Garbage?
No, it was someone...
Burt Adams. A guy named Burt Adams.
No, it was a leader from the old Dukakis campaign.
Yeah, the person that put Dukakis in the dopey tank with the dopey helmet. That's what the first thing I saw him. The difference between Dukakis debacle and the Trump debacle is, nearest as I can remember, we don't have any film of Dukakis almost slipping as he tried to open the door of the tank. At least I think by the time the media started taking pictures and filming the operation, I think he was already safely ensconced in that military vehicle.
Yeah. Say, Bob, I'm calling. I missed the first hour of the show this morning. I was taking my dog. Sadly, about 2 months ago, I had to put down my dog, a rescue dog that I had for almost 6 years, and he couldn't make it anymore. He lived a good life. So 2 weeks ago, I adopted a dog, and the reason I didn't listen to the show this morning from 9 to 10 is I was taking my new adopted dog to the groomer. I forgot to adopt a dog that didn't need to go to a groomer. I just totally... Your dogs have to be groomed by a professional or what?
My dogs never were groomed by a professional. Well, I shouldn't say never. Rarely. They probably would have liked it. They didn't absolutely need it, but they certainly would have loved it.
Well, I mean, there are some dogs that, I mean, they have to, whether you can home groom them, which I can't. I mean, if I didn't groom my dog, she would grow out to look like, a sheep on an Australian sheep farm. She has to be groomed. So that's what I was doing. I was taking my dog to the groomer.
Yeah, but what's her name?
Her name is Layla.
Oh, that's a good choice.
Layla. Well, that's the name she came with. We adopted her. The people who had her could no longer care for her. So she's 7 years old, and she is a mix between a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel and a Bichon. So they're called a Cavachon. And she is as smart as a whip, as loving as heck. And we are so lucky to have her. And I
wouldn't mind having her as president. You think we could get her on the ballot at the last minute?
Well, I don't know. We might be able to get her on a state ticket. I'm not sure if we could get her on, the presidential ticket, but a state ticket. Since I missed the first hour, I don't know if you talked about this subject, and the subject is the fifth inning. Did you talk about the fifth inning on the show?
No. Interestingly, no Yankee fan actually brought it up. I toyed with the idea of talking about last night in the Bronx, and then I thought, no, I'm not going to lead that conversation. I'm going to be, even though it's been established by now, I'm no longer a Yankees fan. I'm a Red Sox fan. It seemed inappropriate for me to start that. It did cross my mind, by the way, to start the show with something, even if it was just a short acknowledgement. And I thought, I think I'll rewind and be kind.
Remember Wrong Way Corrigan?
Yeah. Well, I remember this. Yeah, I remember hearing about him.
He took off from New York to fly to California, and he ended up in England. Wrong way, Corrigan. Some people might remember. That's a true story. He flew the wrong way. And that was the Yankees in the fifth inning yesterday, just flying the wrong way with 3 errors. I'm going to hold myself back and simply say I've never been a Yankee fan. And I used to be like an anti-Yankee fan. I've calmed down. I thought one of the greatest things in sports ever was in 2004 when the Yankees were ahead by 3 games over Boston in the American League Championship Series. Yankees won 3 games to Boston 0, and Boston came back and won the series. That's one of the delights of sport.
Somebody had reminded me of that. I had actually shockingly forgotten about that, but somebody brought that up earlier this week. So, you never know. I think I mentioned on the program, maybe it was Tuesday, that I really was hoping this would wind up going to 7 games, and then the 7th game I was hoping would be tied at 2 runs apiece after 9 complete innings. And then I hoped it would go scoreless for at least 10 innings. And, and then at least, and then, because it hasn't happened before. And then let the Yankees win. And again, obviously it didn't happen this year, but I thought, well, that would be a fun way for John Sterling to finally wrap up his illustrious broadcast career. The Yankees win 3-2, or maybe with a grand slam, 6-2, after 23 innings. My guess is if Game 7 ran more than 20 innings, my guess is John Sterling would no longer be part of the broadcast. But hey, you never know.
Well, I think the John Sterling thing at the end of a winning Yankee game, I think that's the most insipid one of all. Everyone has an ending like put it in the books or the game is over. But when, the Yankees win, the Yankees win.
I know what you mean. And, it's become basically, it's the stuff of now, it's self-parody right now. I mean, it might have been, who knows, maybe it was clever at one point. You're right. But still, I think it would have been nice. Now, let me play this because I didn't hear how this sounded on ESPN radio, but I'm just going through our stack of sports stuff from the other night when the Yankees apparently did win. I just want to play this to hear how the call was handled when Anthony Volpe hit a grand slam in that game when the Yankees actually managed to keep themselves from being eliminated at that point.
Bases loaded, 2 down, bottom of the 3rd. Here's the pitch. Swing and a ball drilled, left field. Hernandez back, gone! Grand slam, Anthony Volpe over the left field wall. And Yankee Stadium explodes. It's 5-2 New York.
Now that's a good call. That was on ESPN radio. I would definitely rather hear that kind of call than what Yankee fans who listen to a Yankee broadcast on radio in recent years have been subjected to with John Sterling. And again, I'd say John Sterling is something along the lines of what Howard Cosell was. Either people loved him or people despised him. But he was known by virtually everyone in the business, for better or worse.
Yeah, Howard Cosell was one of my favorites. I liked him because he brought up outside things, you know. He's the one that said, Howard Cosell, when O.J. was with the Bills and O.J. was setting records and they were playing against Miami, and Howard said, Miami has the oranges, but Buffalo has the juice.
See? The thing about one of the other things, non-sports related, about Howard Cosell, like a lot of people, whether they're just very well known or also very rich or both, Howard Cosell was one of those people who thought the rules didn't apply to him. So when ABC, at their beautiful, well, not so beautiful headquarters there on West 66th Street, when they imposed an edict that there be no smoking in the building, Howard Cosell thought it was cute to light up one of his cigars in the elevator, even though I think the elevator clearly said no smoking. But Howard Cosell, who not only could speak of sports but also could disregard the rules that apply to mere mortals, he thought it was great. See, society, and some people say, well, that's a relatively minor aberration. Yeah, well, it's more the principle of the matter. Society can't run very well with people like Howard Cosell who flagrantly disregard the rules. If everybody did that, then we would be in a land of chaos. Oh, wait, we are. Never mind.
Yeah, well, hey, Howard had his own style, his own way.
Well, and to be sure, and maybe I say this on behalf of only one American, he is missed.
Oh, sure. He had brought a lot of color to the broadcast. Sure thing.
Yeah, and back, let's put it this way, back in the day when he was part of the wonderful Monday Night Football team, I think that's when ABC's Monday Night Football franchise was really in its glory. I think they were firing on all cylinders. I think, wasn't perfect, but it's pretty good.
Bob, let me mention something there because you've ignited a thought. Back on Monday Night Football, it was Howard Cosell, Dandy Don Meredith, and the play-by-play was done by Frank Gifford. And Frank Gifford was, I don't know if you remember this, but he was making more mistakes about calling the plays on the field. He was, dead wrong. He was like, what's wrong with him? And it did turn out, and I'm not making light of this, but it did turn out that Frank Gifford, it was found out that he did have CTE. And that was showing up in the broadcast booth with all of the errors he was making in broadcasting. And sadly, it was found out that, he took a lot of hits to the head. And
I didn't realize that. Well, I appreciate your mentioning it. I didn't pay, although I watched some Monday Night Football, I didn't pay that much attention. But that was one part. I always thought that Frank Gifford was just the luckiest man in the world to be married to, what's her name? Felicia Gifford, because she, if you remember morning TV, Felicia Gifford and who was her sidekick? Bert Parks? Who was the, Regis. Regis Philbin. Wasn't Bert Parks. Anyway, so Felicia Gifford and Regis Philbin, that was America's perfect breakfast show. Every morning at 9 o'clock, you could see Regis and Felicia, and it's just like, and I'm thinking, she may not be a great TV show host, but I bet she's a perfect companion for Frank Gifford, the luckiest man alive.
Now you're kidding, Felicia. I mean, that wasn't her name.
Well, Mrs. Gifford. We'll call her Mrs. Gifford. Her real first name is irrelevant. Felicia Gifford sounds good. Thinking of what, again, both of them, I believe, as I recall from reading page 6 in the New York Post, both of them live charmed lives. So we'll just call them Frank and Felicia Gifford. Maybe not 100% perfect, but I'm sure they enjoyed each other.
Well, your play-by-play on this is kind of off. Did you play football?
No, but I sometimes I wish I did. So at least when people hear a show like this or a call like this, at least then I would have some kind of plausible excuse. But no, I didn't. But I will say this: I don't know that I've ever. I rarely talk about what happened in my young life, but I did, as a young man, sustain a concussion. But it had nothing to do with football. So maybe that explains a couple of things.
No. Well, one concussion.
Yeah, it was one, and by the way, it was slight, but it was enough where I was hospitalized at Magnificent Ideal Hospital at 600 High Avenue, and it's the only time I've ever eaten something passed off as scrambled eggs that I got really sick, because I don't know what that was in the bowl, but them wasn't eggs.
Yeah.
So that's, it's bringing up so many pleasant memories. I appreciate it, Ron.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, I'm not blaming the hospital. And anyway, it's too late now. Even if I wanted to contact an attorney, I'm sure. What, you want to file a suit for something that was served to you, passed off as scrambled egg product, and it made you sick? Well, the hospital has been out of business now for a long time, and the surviving entity can't be held liable because that entity didn't even exist when this ill-fated breakfast was served on that hill in Endicott. It's 11:33. Bob Joseph, let the good times roll. WNBF. There are other games in town, but Binghamton now is the very best game. Let's take more calls. Remember, time is of the essence, so if you call now, you might be able to make it on the program, and depending on call volume, we may keep the calls relatively short. We'll see how things go between now and noon. 607-772-1290. Selena in Binghamton. Good morning.
Good morning, Bob. Once again, I love your show. I have a question. I'm kind of worried. After the election, do you think gasoline, electricity, and natural gas prices are going to spike?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about.
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think they will. I think if you want to get gas, if you have a big storage tank, now that gas is down close to $3 a gallon, I would get as much as you can and store it safely. Don't take any chances, but don't be surprised to see energy prices spike in the final weeks of 2024.
Yeah, but what bothers me is I don't use gasoline. I use diesel. It's $1 more.
Well, okay, that'll be even worse. So diesel, and I haven't looked at the prices. What's diesel now, $4.39?
Well, where I went, it's $4.19.
All right, okay. So, yeah, diesel, if it's $4.19 now in Binghamton, I would say probably after the election it would go up as much as $2 or $3 a gallon. So
I'm afraid
that's my guess.
I think it's going to be about $8.50.
Oh, I don't think it. Well, in California, yes, but around here, it's not going to get up to $8.50. Probably not until at least late January or early February. But
when fuel demand.
Well, when the new administration takes over.
Well,
when the new administration takes over, because there'll be this perception. Remember, when it comes to prices of energy products or anything else, a lot of times it's not pure supply and demand, but it also has to do with a perception of what's going to happen next. So some people, whether it's right or wrong, are going to perceive that the energy industry might be improperly vilified by the new administration. So, in theory, prices could skyrocket just because of people who are trying to game the system. Because there are ways, whether it's the price of oil or the price of oranges, there are ways you can make money.
Look
as prices go up and down. If you know how to play the futures market, if you have a lot of information and you know how to do it, and if you have a little bit of luck, you can rake in a lot of money. And it doesn't matter whether prices are going up or down. It's just if you know how the system works, you could be a billionaire. You too could own the Washington Post.
Hey, Bobby, look at food prices. You know how many hens they had to destroy because of bird flu? Food prices are going to go way up.
Yeah. Well, it's no wonder. It's no wonder they can't afford to open a Chick-fil-A in Johnson City.
I was wondering to hear about that.
Well, see, that's everything is related. I'm sure if they open, the problem is, and I'm sure the people at Chick-fil-A Industries understand this, if they open one of their sandwich huts, even if it's open only 5 days a week instead of 6 in Johnson City, the demand will be so high that it's going to affect their ability to supply their other units. So I think that's the secret reason, or one of the secret reasons.
I was running my RV and I couldn't find a Chick-fil-A anywhere.
All right. Hey, stay tuned. It's tomorrow's show will be very special. Stay tuned.
I will, definitely. I love your show, and thank you for playing ABBA. I love them.
Thank you. It's 11:41, WNBF. Bob from Port Dickinson. Good morning.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
I'm well.
You said this was the only game in town for talk radio. Really?
Well, it is, really.
Oh, thanks.
Well,
okay.
Well, not to minimize your efforts. I'm not ignoring. I mean, I gave a significant amount of airtime over to you talking about your program yesterday. So
you did, and I thank you for it.
It's not. I'm just referring to basically, generally speaking, a show that's on every day, 3 hours a day, 15 hours a week. So technically, but that's what radio stations do to promote. Music stations used to say, top 40 stations used to say, number 1 for fun or whatever. And the ratings could have been number 90, but still, you promote yourself the best way you can.
I got it. I wanted to give you and your listeners a little update because I teased out yesterday what was supposed to happen with our interview with Professor Wax. Yesterday, we were informed 5 minutes before the show aired that she would not be allowed to be interviewed. So we pressed on and did our show. We're professionals in terms of providing the air space and the time. And so we forged on without her. We did make comments about what had happened and how it had happened. We're still fleshing all this out now in writing. Just inexplicable to stop this. They claimed that it was not educational. They were, worried about harm and so on and so forth. I forwarded you a lot of the documents back and forth, but suffice it to say, the interview did not happen, and the public was denied an opportunity to hear from Professor Wax and what her side of the story is and how it affected and how it continues to affect education and the university experience and the unprecedented nature of sanctioning her for a total year off with half pay. Never happened before. So it was certainly something worthy of discussion. I think this isn't the end of it. It's just the beginning of a new chapter. So please, folks, stay tuned. You'll see more about this, I think, in the local paper. It's going to take on a life of its own here because of the blatant violation of constitutional protections.
Well, I think it'll go. Here's my perception, my prediction. I say it goes national. I say it's going to go national. It's going to be on the Fox. It's going to be. Okay.
If Professor Wax has anything to say about it will.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That, it's not because it's up to you or your co-host or because it's Binghamton. It's just because of the nature of the story. One of the reasons it may not go national quickly is because the nation's attention right now is fixated on something else. But after the election is all over, but the shouting, which could take several months or years, at some point, Fox and some other networks need something to cover. So I'm saying it has, let's put it this way, it has the elements of a story that could go national. It has the elements of something that could wind up in the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal. Now, will it? I don't know. But stories that are somewhat similar have managed to glean some national attention. So, don't rule it out.
Why don't you and I get in front of it and we'll co-host us on your show, talk with her and give her an hour?
I don't know. I'm not going to announce it in advance because then I'll probably get shut down. Probably even this conversation means I'll get shut down. So, I better not be shut down. I don't think I'll be shut down because I am the almighty Bob. I'm kidding. Some people are saying, Bob, you're making us sick, so knock it off. Anyway, I appreciate the update, and keep me posted on this, okay?
All right, Bob. Thank you.
Yep, take care. 11:46. I know exactly who can do a good story about this for the Press and Sun Bulletin, if he's listening. And he would do it, too. And I'll tell you what. I'll say right here and now. If he does a story about this matter in the Press and Sun Bulletin, I may actually take advantage of one of their offers and start my subscription again. We'll see. It's not a guarantee, but I will consider. So if he does a story and it's on the front page about this issue, because, to be honest, Gannett, they won't leave me alone. They just won't leave me alone. They want me back. Well, maybe I'll come back. If that story about what happened with respect to this talk show at Binghamton University, if it winds up on the front page of the Press and Sun Bulletin, I may renew my subscription at one of those initial 3-month rates to see how they're doing. Because I support them. You know that. It's Bob Joseph live, serving you personally on WNBF. Here's a 1290 traffic alert. Route 26 South, approaching the exit to Route 17, I-86, Route 26 South. Heading from Vestal toward Endicott, a tractor trailer has overturned. And apparently it had a load of sand. So there you go. It's a problem. 26 South, tractor trailer overturned not too long ago. Apparently it's between a couple of the exits to Route 17. Don't know if anybody was injured, but sounds like that's a serious matter for the Department of Traffic. Gary from Binghamton's West Side, good morning.
Hi, Bob. Hey, two things about the baseball game. He had a no-hitter going into the 5th inning also when that happened. And it's the biggest comeback in World Series. You know, I'm a Mets fan, and this is the way that the Mets lose all the time. We lose all the time. And so, you know, it hurts right now. I want to talk about a text message I got. I thought it was one of them political messages again. It came from Texas. It says, a voter at, gives my physical address, has not voted yet in the election. And it said, this may be an outdated information. And then it says, here is a link to go to for early voting. So, you know, they're keeping track of you. And I'm happy for early voting. I'm glad people are getting out and voting. I mean, I really am. It's a good thing. You know, election day, I just want to go in, place my vote for Pat Paulson, and get out of there without waiting.
You are a very intelligent person. Thank you, Gary. Pat Paulson. But now I have something else to contemplate before I cast my important vote. Jesse and Owego, you're on the air.
Yeah, I do like early voting as long as they're voting in person. It's the absentee that bothers me because I think there should be a lot more qualifications in order for you to do it and not for convenience. That's the only thing I don't like about that. But the early voting, I actually think it's a pretty good idea.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Give me a call tomorrow. I'm going to try to squeeze in one or two quick calls.
You got it.
Thanks. Vinny in Binghamton. We have only moments to go before the show comes to a crashing halt. What's on your mind?
That's all I need. You had a caller called before about the dirty tactics that the Democrats are doing. Well, I just wanted to read, if you guys remember that interview that Leslie Stahl had with Donald Trump. In that, she said, she asked Donald Trump, do you know what you told me a long time ago about why you say fake news and fake media? The reason you do it is that it is used to discredit the news media so that when you say negative things about him, no one will believe. That's why he says that. If you don't agree with him, you're fake. If you agree with him, you're the truth. And that's why I've always said since President Barack Obama's second term that you've got to have an attack dog out there and attack this news media. With the Al Smith, Bob, going after Kamala Harris because she's not there. How come you news media didn't bring up the White House Correspondents' Center? That's a tradition. He never went. Why did you bring up talking about how the Democrats have done Joe Biden? They've put Kamala Harris in there. What did you do to Mike Pence? And the mega rally. It just happened. You saw what happened. Soon as Joe Biden says something, you put the cameras down, you fly over there. Why didn't you go back and see what Donald Trump said? He said it's no big deal.
That's just how they do it. Appreciate your call. It's all the time we have for today. But don't worry. The very best program of the week is on tap tomorrow. Keep the kids out of school if you think they deserve to hear the best program. Binghamton Now, tomorrow. I'm Bob Joseph. Tune in to WNBF.